Hungarian Folk Tales. The Goat Soldiers. A long time ago, in a distant land, there lived a poor lad. His mother and father both died when he was young, and he was all alone. He was poor, he had no one, and so the poor lad became a shepherd. He was still tending sheep when it came time to become a soldier. So he went straight into the army from his flock of sheep. He served his 3 years, and when he returned, he was so poor that he didn't know what to do or where to look. He had nothing to his name and hardly any clothes. There was a farmer who owned a flock of 30 goats, who needed a goat herd, who could herd the goats during the day and milk them every morning, noon and night, and keep their stable clean and tidy. The young lad happened to be passing and took the job straight away and led the goats out to the nearby meadow. But the young lad was no ordinary goat herd. He was sharp and witty and had learned a couple of clever tricks during his time as a soldier. So he talked to the goats all of the time and ordered them around in a military fashion until they learned to understand his simple commands. He marched them up and down, and by the time he was finished, he could get them to parade around the meadow like a miniature army. One day, the lad saw a rich man in a carriage riding past the meadow, so he drove the herd of goats to the side of the road, where he waved, and the rich man stopped his carriage. The lad said, "The reason I stopped you, sir, is to show you what these goats have learnt to do since I have been their goat herd." The rich man in the carriage was very impressed with their performance and asked, "Who owns these goat soldiers?" "Why, they belong to the local farmer." The rich man was so impressed that he purchased all 30 goats but insisted that the young lad should go and work for him for a month. Then the rich man invited all of his rich friends to come and see for themselves. "I want to show you something very interesting, something you've never seen in your life before." gentleman from a foreign land liked the performance so much that he begged to buy the herd of goats. And so the rich man sold them to him. The foreign gentleman reached into his pocket and paid the price, and the rich man gave all the money to the goat herd, who used the money to buy a plot of land, build a fine house, and buy himself some good clothes, and to live a proper life like other people did. And he lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Rich Man's 3 Sons. Once upon a time, there lived a rich man. One day, one of the rich man's farms burned to the ground, and nothing was left but a pile of smoking embers. The rich man had made his fortune as a moneylender, and one of his unhappy borrowers had burned his home down. The rich man felt terribly sad, and not even the priest could comfort him, as he was sure the man would eventually go to hell because of the cruel way he had made money all his life. That may well be true, the rich man thought. But if someone should burn down my other farm, how will my 3 sons survive? The rich man thought and thought about this until he decided to find all 3 a job. He made the eldest son a soldier because he was very bright. He made the middle son a blacksmith's apprentice. And then he spoke to the youngest of his 3 sons and said, "I think you will make a fine barber, son of mine." The youngest son had no objections, and all 3 agreed to do their father's bidding, as anything was better than working the land. The eldest liked the idea of marching around with a silver sword by his side, while the other 2 were happy that they would not have to hoe or mow now that they had proper trades. The years passed by, and the rich man became old, although he had never been a young man, and he spent all his time thinking how he could one day avoid hell's fiery furnace that had been promised to him by the priest. But the rich man's 3 sons did not have a care in the world. His son the soldier danced his days away, while his son the blacksmith and the barber spent all their days making merry. Then the day came when the sons received a letter saying that they should all 3 return home at once because their father's days were numbered, and he wanted to see his sons. So all 3 sons journeyed home and thought they would soon inherit a fortune from their rich father. When they arrived, the rich man asked his son the soldier, "Well, my son, what manner of soldier have you become?" "Well, my father, the emperor has no finer soldier than I, and I wield a silver sword like no other. The other day, it began to rain while we were on parade, and all the other soldiers got wet, but not I, because I drew my sword and span it around so swiftly above my head that I remained dry." The rich man nodded. "I'm glad, my son, that you have become such a fine soldier, and I have no need to worry about your fortune." Then he asked the middle son, "And you, my son, how do you fare as a blacksmith?" "Well, my father, there's no finer blacksmith in this land, or any other beyond its borders. Only yesterday, a coach passed by the smithy, drawn by 4 grey horses. The lord driving the coach said that all 4 horses needed reshoeing, but he had no time to stop. My master stood and scratched his head, but while he stood there, I swiftly shoed all 4 horses, and the coach did not have to stop for a single second. The rich man also noted his middle son's words. "You are indeed a master of your trade, my son, and I have no need to worry about your fortune. And you, my youngest son, are you also a master of your trade? You ask me if I'm a master barber, father? Well, nothing proves it better than the fact that I shaved a rabbit clean while it was running yesterday, and I did not cut its soft skin once." The rich man also noted his youngest son's words, and then spoke to all three. "I see, my sons, that you all have the skill to make your own fortunes, and you have no need of mine. And so now I can use all of my money to pay myself out of hell's fiery furnace." Then the rich man called the priest, gave him all his money, and told him to give it to the poor. So the rich man's three sons were given nothing for their pains and ran away, never to return. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pelican Bird. Once upon a time, there lived an old king, and the old king did not know whether to weep with sorrow or to weep with joy. "My dear daughter, when I was young, I had a pelican bird that could sing so beautifully. And as long as I heard that pelican bird sing, I stayed forever young and forgot all my troubles in the world. But one day my pelican bird vanished overnight, and I searched far and near to find it again, but sadly failed, and that is why I feel such sorrow. But I also feel great joy, because in all my travels, far and near, I have never seen a maiden fairer than you, my dear. Well, father dear, if that is so, I will not marry until somebody brings that singing pelican bird back to you. Oh, give it up, dear daughter, because you will die an old maid." "No, father, I will keep my vow." So the beautiful princess announced to all the world that she would only marry the man who brought back her father's singing pelican bird. So princes arrived and were sent forth to search the four corners of the world, but they all returned without the singing pelican bird. A handsome young tailor lived in the royal court, who could not bear to see his sovereign look so sad. So he packed his bag with bread, bacon and onions and set off in search of the singing pelican bird. The young tailor walked until he found himself in a dark forest, where he met a grey-haired beggar, and the beggar said, "Give me a slice of bread, and God will reward you." "Very well, old man, here you are. I know that you have come to this place to find the pelican bird. Many young princes have passed through this forest, and I asked them each for a slice of bread, but none of them helped me as you have, and they all went back to the palace empty-handed. A good deed deserves a just reward. The pelican bird is to be found beyond the vast ocean, but you cannot walk to this place. You need to go and see the old witch, who lives deeper still in the dark forest." "Greetings, old lady. Do you enjoy good health? What brings you to this far and forgotten place?" "I'm on a quest to find a pelican bird that can sing beautiful songs and flew away beyond the vast ocean. But I intend to cross that ocean because my king cannot live without his beloved pelican bird. If you will lend me your horse, I promise that the pelican bird will make you a girl again." Go ahead and take my horse. It's tethered under the bridge." So the young tailor fetched the horse and saw it had a mane of gold. The horse suddenly spoke and said, "Climb on my back, master." "Master, I shall leave you now. You must travel on and ask about the whereabouts of the pelican bird, because one good question is worth 100 bad guesses." "Wait, I shall give you this whistle. If you're ever in trouble, blow it and I will appear." "Very well, horse," and the horse vanished. So the young tailor walked and walked until he met an ancient old woman. Old lady, please show me the way to the pelican bird. I plan to take it back to my king, whose heart is half filled with sorrow since it left him." "I know, my child. I'll happily show you the way. Do you see that distant forest? You will find the pelican bird stuck up in the highest tree, where the poor thing has been suffering all these long years." So the young tailor hurried to the distant forest and soon found the tallest tree. And there, sure enough, he sighted the pelican bird stuck up among its branches. He tried to climb the tall tree, but failed, and the young tailor was heartbroken. "Did you call me, master?" "Yes, I did. The pelican bird is up in the tree, but I cannot climb it." "Worry not, master. You just climb up on my back and we shall fly to the top of the tree. With one hand you can lift up the tree branch and with the other, take the bird and hold it good and tight." It took the young tailor a week and a day to journey back to the palace, where he tried to get the bird to sing for the king. "Sing, pelican bird, we're home again at last." When they returned, the old king soon heard the pelican bird singing sweetly, and he was an old king no longer. Then they held a wonderful wedding feast, and all lived happily ever after. And that is where my story ends. Hungarian Folk Tales. Stone Soup. Once upon a time, a poor young soldier was coming home from the war. The poor soul wandered from one village to another, threadbare and hungry. He was offered no bread or even a little hot soup, anywhere at all. He went from house to house asking for something to eat. But the people either set the dogs on him or told him they themselves were too poor to eat. As he carried on from gate to gate, he made up his mind to go into the first house and make a pot of soup for himself, whoever the owner of the house might be. He picked up a stone at the entrance of a house and walked in. The owner was an old woman. "Good morning, old lady." "Good morning to you, young soldier." "Are you well today, old lady?" "I am well. And how are you, young soldier?" "I'm also well." but I have to say that I would love to eat a little soup, if you have any to spare." "Oh, young soldier, I'd gladly give you some if I had any, but I'm as poor as a church mouse. I have nothing. My pantry, my attic, and my whole house are all empty. I have nothing, not even a crust of bread." "Well," said the soldier, "I'm not so poor. I have a stone right here in my pocket. I could make a soup out of it. All I need is a pot or a pan or something to cook it in." "Well, I could give you one. I have plenty of pots in the house," said the old woman, "but I have nothing to put in them." The soldier washed the stone nice and neatly and placed it in the pot. The old woman lit the fire. The soldier poured water over the stone and placed it on the fire to cook. He even stirred it with a long wooden spoon. The old woman watched him with curiosity. The soldier even tried the soup. "Well, it's good enough," he said, "but if it had a little salt in it, it would be even better." "I'll get you some salt. I have plenty." The soldier put the salt into it, stirred it, and said, "If you had a spoonful of fat, that would make it even better." The old woman said, "I do have some. I'll bring it right away." She brought a spoonful of fat and they put it in the pot. The soldier stirred it and tried it while the old woman watched his every move. The soldier said, "Well, you know, I'm used to making stone soup, but I usually make it with a piece of sausage. That gives it a better flavour." "Oh, I have some sausage," said the old woman. "I'll give you some from the pantry." Then the soldier said, "Bring 2 pieces, so then you'll have one and I'll have one too." "Very well, I shall bring 2." And the old woman brought 2 pieces of sausage. The soldier put them both in the pot, then stirred it and tried it. "Do you know," he said, "if you have some potatoes, we could cut some up and put them in here too. And if you have some vegetables, that would really top it all." "Oh, but I do have some," said the old woman, "and I'll bring them at once." So she hurried off right away, pulled up some potatoes and vegetables, which they cleaned and cut into pieces and put into the soup. Then the soldier stirred it, tasted it, and said to the old woman, "You should try it too. It's really good." The old woman tried the soup and said, "Well, I would have never have believed that you could make such a good soup from a stone." They left it to cook a while. Then the soldier said, "A little rice would improve it, but I'm not sure you have any." "Oh, but I do have some rice." Then they put some rice into the soup too. "Now it's just like the soups I usually make." Then they waited for the soup to be ready, and the soldier served the old woman and himself a bowlful each, and they both began to eat. The old woman couldn't help wondering how such a good soup like this had been made out of a stone. When they had had enough to eat, the old woman said to the soldier, "Tell me, young soldier, would you sell me this stone? Quite often I have nothing to cook, but with this stone I would always have at least a little soup." "Well, why not? It's yours for 100 florins. The old woman quickly gave him the 100 florins and wrapped the stone from the soup in a cloth, so she could use it again to make soup whenever she wanted. Then the young soldier left with the 100 florins before the old woman could change her mind. So he had satisfied his hunger, and he had 100 florins for his troubles. He walked cheerfully on till nightfall, when he met another old woman, who had no idea how to make good soup out of a stone either. He played his trick again and had a good meal on top of it. And I don't know what kind of soup the old woman made after that, as I was told this story by an old aunt of mine. But I suppose they tried it when they were poor back in the old country. But whatever the case, they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Witch. Once upon a time, there lived an old man who had 3 sons. When all 3 were fully grown, they decided to marry and told their father of their wish. "Very well, but one at a time. I want you all to take a walk, and the one who returns with the prettiest flowers will be the first to marry." The 2 elder brothers did not even leave the village, Both of them had a sweetheart, so each of them brought a nice bunch of flowers back to their father. The youngest son, however, had no sweetheart, so he went out of the town to look for flowers. He walked and he walked until he eventually came to a vast forest, in the middle of which he came across an old palace surrounded by a flower garden. Oh, if only I could pick flowers in this beautiful garden. The youngest son was still standing there when a witch appeared in the garden and asked him, "Why are you so sad, my child?" Then the young man told her what his problem was. "If all you need are flowers, come with me and I shall give you some." Then she took him into the garden and picked a bunch of beautiful flowers. As soon as the poor man caught sight of the flowers, he said to his eldest sons, "Well, sons, it will be your younger brother who will marry first, because he has returned with the best blossoms." But the elder brothers complained to their father so bitterly that he eventually agreed to set a second test. "Very well, the second test shall be he who brings back the prettiest kerchief shall be the one to marry first." So the sons went off, the two elder ones to their sweethearts in the village, and the youngest one to the witch in the forest. "What do you need this time, my child?" The youngest son told her, and so the old witch went back into the palace and brought the young man a beautiful gold-trimmed kerchief that bedazzled the boy. The two elder brothers also brought a kerchief each, but the youngest son's was by far the loveliest of the lot. The elder brothers were very upset, and so their father eventually agreed to set a third test. "Very well, go and bring me your sweethearts. He who brings me the loveliest girl shall be the one to marry first." This was easy for the two elder brothers because they both had sweethearts in the village. But where, oh where, should the youngest brother look for a bride? Who could he take to his father? Should he fetch the old witch who had given him the flowers and the kerchief? So the youngest son set off with his head hung low. He walked into the forest, stopped in front of the palace, and leaned against the fence with a face as sad as the autumn rain. "What's the matter with you, my child?" "Oh, don't even ask me what the matter is. My father told us that the son who took the prettiest sweetheart home would be the first to marry." "Don't hang your head, my child, but come with me to the palace. Here's a fireplace, make a fire. With every flame that flickers up, a witch will appear before your eyes. Fear not and stand bravely there until you see the last and ugliest witch of all that will have a bunch of keys between her teeth. Then you need to snatch the keys, otherwise the rest of the witches will tear you apart. And now the rest is up to you." Saying nothing more, the old witch vanished. The young man made a fire in the fireplace, and as the flames began to grow and crackle, a witch emerged from the flames. The youngest son was so afraid that a shiver of fright ran down his spine. Then a second flame leapt forth, producing a second witch. Then many more witches followed this one. Eventually, the last witch appeared with a bunch of keys between her teeth. The youngest son gathered all his courage and snatched the keys, and, wonder of wonders, the ugly witch turned into a beautiful princess. The youngest son was too surprised to speak. All the witches then vanished from the room and were replaced by a throng of graceful maidens. Then the pretty princess said, "You must be very surprised. I'll have you know that I was the old witch who gave you the flowers and the kerchief. You must have been sent here by God, because I was a princess and a spell was cast on me. Had you not appeared, I would have remained an old witch, and now we shall be together for the rest of our natural days." The poor man was in good spirits and said, "Very well, I will let my elder sons marry too." And that they did, and their younger brother gave them each a house with plenty of land. Then the youngest and most fortunate son took his bride back to the palace, where they lived happily ever after.